Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Monday, September 29th, 2025. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, we'll talk with Variety's Rebecca Rubin about the box office for One Battle After Another in its opening weekend. And we'll hear from Variety's John Hopewell on the scene at the San Sebastián Film Festival that just wrapped up in Spain. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines from the weekend that you need to know. I'm recording this on Sunday afternoon because I'm traveling overseas this week. Daily Variety episodes may be a little delayed this week, depending on how that all goes. Beyond the weekend box office, there was a lot of showbiz news over the weekend. In business circles, the big talk is video game giant Electronic Arts. It's the target of a $50 billion buyout by private equity heavyweight Silver Lake and others. We've been expecting movement around EA for a while, but this approach is a surprise. Variety's Jennifer Maz is all over this story. Selena Gomez and Benny Blanco tied the knot over the weekend in Santa Barbara. What a beautiful place to get hitched. Congrats to them both. Paul McCartney was also up that way this weekend, kicking off his new tour with a set that definitely impressed. Variety's Chris Willman was moved when Paul sang Help for the first time on stage as a solo act in tribute to his old friend John. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. Now we turn to conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. If it's Monday, we're talking box office with Rebecca Rubin, our senior film and media reporter. Rebecca breaks down the performance of One Battle After Another and the rest of the weekend. Rebecca Rubin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we are firmly in the fall now, and you can really see it in the box office. And of course, the big movie that people are talking about is One Battle After Another. Paul Thomas Anderson, Leonardo DiCaprio, Warner Brothers putting all of its might behind it. Rebecca, how do you assess this movie in its first weekend?
I think this is actually a pretty tough movie to assess in its first weekend. It kicked off domestically with 22.4 million and globally with 48.5 million. There are two ways to look at those numbers. On one hand, it cost a lot of money. Warner Brothers spent, depending on who you ask, $130 million or more to produce it, which means it has to make a lot of money to justify those price tags. And so a start of $22 million domestically is not necessarily igniting fireworks over the box office. But on the other hand, this is an original R-rated movie that is nearly 3 hours long, and it doesn't have that built-in audience that a lot of franchise fare has. And so I think this is going to be a case where opening weekend doesn't tell the whole story, and whether or not it catches on through word of mouth is going to be really interesting.
Leonardo DiCaprio is still one of the biggest stars on the planet, very recognizable. In the run of his recent movies, where does this opening stand?
So this opening weekend is beneath his last theatrical effort, which was 2023's Killers of the Flower Moon. That movie also had a bit of heft in terms of the director being Martin Scorsese and his co-star Robert De Niro, and that opened to 23 million, so not that far off. And it ended up with 68 million domestically and $158 million globally, which again, similarly, that's not bad for that movie was 3 hours and 30 minutes. The Wolf of Wall Street, that movie opened to $18 million in 2013, and it had huge legs. It ended up making $116 million domestically and over $400 million worldwide.
Wolf of Wall Street had a lot of what One Battle After Another has going for it. It's a movie that people are talking about and thinking about what it says about our times. It's clearly on its way to an awards run. Does that make up for maybe less than robust box office?
If this film ends up being a big player in the awards race, doesn't necessarily offset if it doesn't end up making money at the box office, but It's also very important to them to have movies in the awards conversation, and since they've had just such a strong box office year, they have a little bit more freedom to have a movie underperform if that is the case, because they've had hit after hit, these movies of all different genres and styles wildly overperforming expectations.
We've been talking over the summer, of course, the IMAX boost was a big factor. Did this have any kind of real IMAX business?
Yes, premium large formats, that includes the IMAX and the Dolby screens, contributed 51% of the overall domestic number, which is very significant. And similar to your Oppenheimers and your Dune Part 2s, where the director is saying, I made this movie for audiences to see it in these premium formats. We've seen audiences in this case really respond, and VistaVision, there's only, I think, 4 screens in the country that are offering it in VistaVision, but that was a big part of the conversation as well, to get people to see it in these formats that go beyond just the average screening.
As you quote somebody in your box office story saying the real determination is, does it have legs? And does all that word of mouth translates into, we got to go see this movie?
What stood out to me about the opening weekend turnout was that it was predominantly male, and 65% of moviegoers were men and boys. Nearly 50% were over the age of 25. So we're talking a very older male audience. And what I think they have to do moving forward is to appeal more to women and get younger people in there.
Rebecca, what else was going on at the box office this week? Any other surprises?
The other box office benchmark of note is the Demon Slayer movie, which was a huge surprise hit a few weekends ago, is now the highest grossing anime film ever, not just in North America, but in the world. It's made right now $118 million domestically and over $600 million globally, making it one of the top 10 highest grossing films of the year. And so that's always just a nice boon for movie theaters, because they were probably not expecting such a windfall from this movie heading into the year. And that, along with some other unexpected surprises, the Conjuring movie being bigger than expected. Next weekend, the Taylor Swift film will be a little extra cherry on top.
Demon Slayer is a happy story for Sony because, of course, it comes through its Crunchyroll anime division and distributed by Sony Pictures. Taylor Swift, as you have written about very smartly on Variety.com. I think she really respects radio. She never sleeps on doing radio promotion. She often does iHeart events. I think Taylor Swift also has an appreciation for exhibition, and this really does seem like nothing short of a gift for exhibition. So much to watch next weekend. Rebecca, as always, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And now we turn to John Hopewell, Variety's veteran international correspondent. He's coming to us from San Sebastián, Spain, where the annual film festival has just wrapped up. It was a busy frame with stars such as Jennifer Lawrence, Angelina Jolie, and Colin Farrell making appearances that made big headlines around the world. It's another sign of how European festivals are becoming such an important stop for launching movies. John Hopewell coming to us from a hotel in San Sebastián, Spain. Thank you, John, for joining me.
Thank you for being there to listen to me.
I was just reading this morning your rap story of the festival. It's a composite of what we've been talking about for a long time, about how these European festivals that have been around for a long time, people love going to them. Of course, the beautiful setting doesn't hurt. But truly, once again, San Sebastian is a festival that made headlines around the world over the couple of days span of the festival because of the way news travels, but it's transforming in the era of social media when a talk on stage on Spain time can make headlines within hours, big headlines within hours in the US and other markets. Tell us about the mood of the fest coming off of Venice and Toronto. It's been a very active festival season this year in Europe, it seems.
It was intense. And that's because it's one of the festivals which does best what festivals these days does. In other words, it shows films, but it also has big, big stars like Angelina Jolie and Jennifer Lawrence. It also has conferences, and it has industry sections where people are shown projects from Spain, Latin America, or works in progress. If you put all of that together, you get a lot of people from outside Spain. And when you have a lot of people from outside Spain, you have an informal market as well as the market of the films which are shown at the festival.
I have to ask you, what were people saying? The politics, the drama coming out of the US, the Jimmy Kimmel situation, TikTok. Were they asking you, John, what's going on with your colleagues in the US? Is that something that people were talking about, the geopolitical situation, particularly in the US?
It was something of a conversation driver, but I think Gaza was probably what focused the major attention. Coming back to Jimmy Kimmel, for decades, Europe has always looked, for a century, to the US as a bastion of democracy. And what is seen to be happening in the US is seen with a mixture of incomprehension and aghastment, I think, by many of the people I talk to in the industry. It's like the center of democracy, which saved the world in 2 world wars, is imploding. And that gives us a sense in Europe, I think, that we have to maintain, bulwark democracy against extremism of any kind.
I mean, aghastment is a pretty good word for, I think, how a lot of us over here are feeling. And okay, so taking my US-centric blinders off, what else? What in terms of industry issues were people talking about?
There was a really excellent creative investors conference co-organized by CAA Media Finance by Rogue Sutherland. And I think it caught the industry zeitgeist that it launched 2 years ago with, I think, the underlying assumption that European producers would be able to learn from the market expertise of leading US figures, plus key into the marketing distribution muscle of US indie distributors or studios. 2 years later, there was a sense voiced by a lot of participants, both from the US and from Europe, that some things are wrong with the US industry. And that means that what was the dominant source of big films and the energy for big films from Europe is declining to a certain extent. Rogue Sutherland, other people talked about the problem of accessing tax breaks in various states in the United States, New York, Louisiana. A lot of people insinuated about the cost of shooting in the US. And thirdly, the real problem which we have at Cannes, Berlin, is the state of US distribution, where very few big US distributors will pre-buy, which is partly because of ancillary in the US. And that means that the US distribution is no longer factored into film financing. Far fewer big films are made in the US or from Europe partnering with the US.
You know, as soon as you say, oh my God, the indie film business is dead, you look at A24 and you look at Neon. They are making it work in a big way. All right, John, at a film festival, you're there first and foremost for the movies. What impressed you out of what you saw at San Sebastián?
I was impressed by several of the Spanish films. One was Sundays, directed by Alauda Ruiz de Azúa, which charts, plumbs, describes, laments the frailty of families and the vulnerability of teenagers. That was great. Another was a return by one of Spain's greatest filmmakers, the Catalan José Luis Guerin, who went to a quiet, humdrum, downbeat suburb of Barcelona and teased out the marvels of that suburb and is universal resonance, be it gentrification, diaspora, etc. José Luis Guérin's film is called Good Valley Stories.
John, what were your impressions of Jennifer Lawrence? Obviously, she made a big impact at the festival. She spoke from the heart on Gaza, and that story went everywhere. She was there for a movie from Lynn Ramsey, Die My Love. What was the vibe around Jennifer Lawrence?
I think with Die My Love that she has found her way again. With Die My Love, I think she has found immense satisfaction for being involved with a film which talks about something at a time that many people think that it's not just enough for a film to be good, it has to be relevant. And with that, much of her comments, in fact, in the press conference weren't about Gaza, they were about motherhood, the difficulties of motherhood, how mothers are not perfect. Nobody is. And I think with that, she has a sense of she can make films like this, bring her star power for their promotion, which certainly happened in San Sebastián.
Well, I'm officially excited about this movie. From my earliest days at Variety, when I would read the stories of San Sebastián, the name sounds so lyrical. It was this beautiful place I've never been. Let me wrap up, John, by asking you, what's special about San Sebastián, the place and the festival?
San Sebastián is extraordinary. It has to be seen to be disbelieved. It has 3 lovely bays and more 3-star Michelin restaurants than, I'm told, any other place per square meter in the world. It has superb cuisine. It has a sense of roots, which the people here love. Many speak Basque, not just Spanish. And I think that at a time when getting to festivals is difficult, it helps to be in a place which many people would say is paradise on earth.
John, thank you for doing our digital dailies around the world. I'm going to sign off as you often sign off your emails. Abrazos.
Lo mismo digo, as I could say in Spanish.
Last week, I promised you highlights from Variety's Entertainment and Technology Summit that was held September 25th in Los Angeles. Last week's Strictly Business podcast featured the full opening session from the summit because it was so good with top TV studio and platform leaders. We had so many great speakers, it's hard to choose other highlights. But nobody in the entire day was more heartfelt than Jerry Bruckheimer, the producer with an incredible resume who is on a high right now from the success of F1 the movie. Bruckheimer delivered the most Capra-esque explanation of what succeeding in business means to him at this stage of his long career. Here's a clip.
It's the greatest thing to do to entertain people. And, it's not about the money anymore. It's about the smile you put on people's faces, the fact that you move them, you take them away from their lives for a couple of hours and make them feel better or feel something when they walk out. And that's the pleasure I get when I stand in the back of an audience and watch them watch one of our films where people are actually moved. And that's what you try to accomplish. We don't always get there, but when we do, it's really exhilarating.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. 2 words. Taylor Swift. Her new album, The Life of a Showgirl, debuts Friday. Media madness will ensue. Before we go, congrats to Mo Rim, Ben Carlson, and Steve Garrett. The 3 showbiz veterans have joined startup theatrical distributor Row K Entertainment, headed by Megan Culligan. Rim is Chief Revenue Officer, Carlson is Chief Marketing Officer, and Garrett is Head of Distribution and Acquisitions. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Rebecca Rubin and John Hopewell. Sticks, nicks, hick picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.